Hey everyone, my name is Alexandra and I am a watercolor artist. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different with this video. I recently asked on my social media if there's anything that you guys want to know more about, and you all gave me so many fantastic questions about watercolor. So today specifically, I am going to answer the top 4 questions that I got from you guys. So the first question that we have for today is, what is the best type of paint to use for watercolor when you start as a beginner? So I'm just going to break it down for you really simple. I actually have this in a little bit more detail in my new watercolor e-course from palette to paper, but I'll go over a quick overview with you guys now. So 2 types of paint to use are either tube paint or pan paint. Tube paint is the one that comes in little tubes like this. You can squeeze them onto your palette. And then pan paint are the ones that already come in pans. Specifically for a beginner, just because it's a lot easier to get started with, I often recommend the ones that come in little pans like this. I find that they're often just a lot easier to use. You can mix your paint on your palette beside, and it's really helpful if you're just starting out. Sometimes with the tube paints, it's a little bit more tricky, but the nice thing about them is that you can mix colors right on your paint palette, and they do dry essentially the same as these. But again, for beginners, I find that pan paints are truly just the most practical. They're easy to take around with you wherever you go, and there's a lot of good options that are high quality without having to necessarily break the bank. Question 2. Is it better to learn to mix your own colors with watercolor paint or to buy them pre-mixed? This is such a good question. Let's take some time to talk about this. This is something that I get quite often, especially with people that are just starting out with watercolor. Color mixing specifically can be something that honestly is super daunting, especially if you have no background with art specifically or you're brand new to painting. So with that, I want to say there is no shame in buying pre-mixed colors. It honestly saves a lot of time and a lot of brain power quite often. That being said, as you learn and grow in your skill with watercolor, there are so many benefits to learn even just the basics of color mixing, and I do have a few tutorials on color mixing specifically as well if you guys are interested. But I'm just going to give you a few reasons why I would say yes, learn color mixing. Reason number 1, it allows you to color match when you're copying photos or working on custom paintings. The reality is you honestly just can't always find the exact color that you need. It's helpful to buy specific things that you need, but if you're painting from very specific photos, you're likely not going to have all of those different tones of paint color. So learning color mixing is going to help you to be able to color match again, whether you're copying a reference photo or painting customs for someone. It's really important to match to the color that you need. The second reason is that it will stretch your creative abilities. 100% you can buy colors, but mixing colors is honestly such a valued skill in art, and you're gonna find that this is really going to expand how in detail and in depth you can make your paintings with adding so much more interest to them. The third reason that I would say yes, you should learn color mixing is that it makes your paintings a lot more cohesive. So just to give an example of this, if you happen to have a bright palette, kind of like this one that I do here, the colors are all very bright in their tones. Often if you're painting things with nature specifically, you're not necessarily going to use each color as it is seen here. Often they have a little bit more of a muted tone. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm painting is simply by mixing just the tiniest bit of one color into everything that you're painting is going to give it a very cohesive look, and it might tone it down into more natural colors without actually taking away from the brightness of the colors or having to use 20 different paints to get the colors that you're looking for. And the last reason I would say yes, learn color mixing is when I'm painting specifically, I'm often super intentional with my palette and the specific feel for my artwork. When you learn how to color mix, you can not only get good at color matching, but you can also learn to mix your colors in a way that will make your painting so much more cohesive and fit the certain mood that you're looking for, whether you're looking for something that's really bright and fun or something that's a lot more toned down and muted. By learning color mixing, you can match each color on your palette with the exact feel that you're going for. So starting out with watercolor, no shame in buying the colors that you want, but my final answer to that is if you can slowly work on learning to color mix, then by all means, please do. Easiest way to do this is to make a color chart, which is also something that I have a tutorial on and talk a lot more about in my watercolor e-course from Palette Paper. I've linked it below. But again, if you can start even with just a little bit of color mixing, you'll find that it'll help your paintings so much. We're gonna take a brief pause in this tutorial because I have something to tell you guys. I am so excited to introduce my new course from Palette to Paper, A Beginner's Guide to Watercolor. In this course, we do a deep dive into all of the foundational watercolor techniques. Then we go into depth painting florals, and after that, we combine it all into one beautiful floral masterpiece. I have a link in the description below for more information, so go check it out. Question number 3. Can I paint a variety of things with one type of paintbrush, or do I need to get a set? So this question is honestly so important if you're new to watercolor but also wanting to buy higher quality things. You'll notice that they can cost money, and to buy a ton of different paintbrushes simply just isn't always practical. So I will let you guys know kind of what I would say for where to start with painting. First of all, you want to know what types of painting you are getting into. And second of all, how much detail work you want to do. So depending on the type of painting, this may change a little bit. One of the things that I would recommend for every person that is starting out with watercolor is to make sure that you have a small, medium, and large brush of some sort. So that can vary in what size you're choosing for small, medium, and large, depending on what scale of paintings you're painting. I tend to do a lot of detail work, so my go-tos are round brushes. I have numbers 2, 6, and 8. But if you're doing larger paintings, 8 doesn't always cut it, so you might want to move to maybe a number 12 brush. But round specifically is super versatile. You can do a lot of different things with it. If you're someone that likes to paint a lot of scenery, then I would say definitely get yourself a flat brush, just because that can work really well when you're doing lots of washes and things. If you are asking me, I just want one brush, I don't know what to get, what type would you recommend? I personally would recommend a round brush, either a 6 or 8, up to you. If you guys get a high enough quality brush, it's gonna come to a really fine point, and you're actually gonna be able to do a surprising amount of detail work even without getting a smaller brush. Question number 4, do you ever mix your paints with white paint to make them lighter? Again, this is a question that's often asked. It's one of those things that if you're used to painting with acrylics or oil, then it's very common to add white into your paint, obviously to get the desired color that you want. With watercolor, when I started out, I did add white to my paint sometimes to get colors that were a little bit lighter if I didn't want them so dark. As I've learned watercolor and grown so much in it, you learn that truly the benefit of painting with watercolor is the fact that you have water mixed into your paint. So for example, on my palette here, I'll just try to show you guys. I have a lot of different paint colors. When I'm looking at the center, I'll show you with the brown just because it's one of the easier ones to see. If I'm looking at the center of my paint here, I can see that it's really dark. As I work my way out where I've already mixed more water in, I simply naturally get a lighter paint color. So one of the things that I do instead of mixing my paints with white is simply water them down, and that is an essential technique to learn with watercolor and something that can be very difficult to master, but the more you guys practice, you'll find it easier to look at the consistency of your paint on your palette to know how light or dark it's going to show up on your paper. So again, another example that you can see is I have this dark blue here, but where I've mixed it with a lot of water, it's really light and translucent. So if you can help it, I would say don't mix your paints with white. Practice just using more watery consistency to get those lighter colors. Also, if you guys want to learn specifically how to make paint look white when you're painting with watercolor, leave a comment below and let me know and I can show you guys that more in depth. So that is it for our 4 questions, but I did have one more question come up that I am going to talk to you guys about in a future video. I had somebody ask me how to learn to paint from a photograph. I am going to show you guys some techniques in the new year on how to paint a full painting from any photograph, just looking at the shapes of the painting. So as my little sneak peek, my answer to that question is to paint from a photograph, the biggest thing to look for is the shapes that you see in the images. So not necessarily the image itself, but you're looking at the shapes generally that you're copying. Again, I'm gonna do a full tutorial on this. If you guys have a photo that you want to send me to do this for, then please do send it to me either by email or on Instagram at Alexandra Victoria Studio. Otherwise, that is it for all of the questions. If there's anything that I didn't answer, something that you think I missed, if you want a part 2, leave a comment below, let me know. Thank you guys so much for following along. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to Alexandra Victoria Studio, and I will see you next time.